Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something down the backwards.
Hey guys, it's Blake from the Lost Cryptids Conservatory, back again with more stories. So when we left off, we were talking about the expedition to Florida. When we came back to Michigan and stuff, the group of us started to organize a Bigfoot event over at the Sister Lakes area based on some old encounters in 1962, in which there was a reported Sasquatch or, dog-man-like creature that was roaming around the area. And so, as we started getting prepped up and stuff, I actually, of course, was researching and stuff. But on the way home from going to the grocery store, we were going about 55 down this road, gone dozens of times each and every year. And all of a sudden we see this canine head start to cross this road in the white line. And at first I'm thinking, again, this happens so fast, but so slowly at the same time. And I'm thinking, oh, it's a coyote crossing the road during, kind of sunset. It's pretty nice out. It was October. And as it got to the middle of the road, I was taken back. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not a coyote, it's a wolf. It's huge. And clearly crossing the road, and as it crossed the road, it began to get up and run like a person would in the field, upright, running, no more than 7 feet tall, as we're passing by it. And, I got the camera down in the cup holder, and I kind of look over with the person with me, and the head shake and that was it. And I'm left wondering, what the heck was that? And that's apparently, these dog-man creatures were sighted in Michigan and other places, but seeing is believing, because whatever that is, that's a whole another story. But I did, in fact, see a wolf cross the road and stand up and run like a person would, with its arms moving like a person would. So that was pretty weird, and that leads up to our little outing that we had over in the Sister Lakes area, in which I actually had a dream. And this deja vu event happened where I explained these dogman encounter to a group of people sitting around a fire, and that actually took place in reality after the dream happened when we got to there. So that was a little weird. But we ended up going to Alligan County on the western side of Michigan, based on a number of sightings that we've got over time. And so this was after the Florida thing, where I was kind of, honestly, a little disappointed I didn't go after the red eye shine creature and walk right up to it and see what it was. So we went to this camping spot, and at nighttime, we had multiple people there with different types of equipment like night vision and thermal. There were people scouting around. They thought they were potentially hearing stuff and having activity. We weren't quite sure. So we had a good group of us, about 5 of us, with thermal walking up the trail, and we started hearing stuff. And so we kind of started making our little sounds, whoops, and I actually did some Native American greetings. And it seemed like we were getting responses enough that, people were kind of like on edge. And at one point, it got to the point where me and another researcher just started running after what the sound was. And we could hear something running away. And we chased it up the trail. Then we came back with the other group, and we started hearing it again. And the whole group of us walked up the trail more, and we heard it again. And me and the other researcher, on thermal, you can see us running through the woods right after where this creature almost should be on thermal. But what ended up happening is I was filming on the GoPro, and I run up to this point where the edge of the flat ground goes into like this steep ravine, probably 50 feet down, maybe a little less, into a creek bottom. And when I got up to this point, I heard the sounds of something sounded like it slapped a branch and was like falling down this creek bottom, but like hitting the tops of trees and stuff, or hitting trees and slapping and stuff, and the thump. And that was recorded. And, it was really weird, and this pretty adamant, we were right there after these things. We came back. And again, when we got to the group of people and stuff, some people wanted to go back. Another researcher was in a totally different area at the beginning of the trail system, and he was having some issues, so other people went back to help him. But me and the researcher that went chasing kept walking down the trail and engaging what we thought was a Sasquatch. And I was a little bit more hot-headed and brazen by trying to actively provoke this creature by chasing it and calling out to it. And we started aggressively kind of like snapping sticks and stuff that I probably wouldn't recommend, and I really do. But coming back from Florida, I wanted to go after these things and make sure that, what we're actually going after is not a deer, not raccoon, not anything that we're misidentifying. So, we chased the things, and it honestly felt like the response we get after the aggressiveness and the calling out was a kind of almost like a recognition response. We got a response, and was recorded a slight tree break and tree knocks and some other audio stuff. But it was almost like this kind of like a friendliness, a playfulness, this even though we're kind of being dumb and aggressive out there, it wasn't anything that we, had to be worried about. It was just more of an acknowledgement. And so that was a little weird. But after a couple hours out there of doing that, me and the other researcher are walking back, and he turns and looks, and he says, he gets really shocked, and he, starts saying, there was one on the trail. I seen one. It was right there. And apparently it was a pretty big Bigfoot, 7 to 8 feet tall, standing on the trail. And when the researcher turned and looked, and this thing is like 60 feet away, it wasn't that far. He said it turned and walked off the trail into the woods. And under the moonlight, you could see, got a pretty good look at its silhouette in darkness, that it blocked out the moonlight on the trail. When it walked off, the moonlight came onto the trail. And so he was pretty excited and riled up with that. And, so we spent a little more time out there trying to interact, but nothing happened. We tried to get back over to where the thermal camera was and other people's night vision. So regrouped and stuff. And I think we got some calls and knocks on the way out. And this can be found on the Alligan Expedition Part 1. And that was night 1. And so we had a pretty good game plan of what we wanted to do for night 2, was actually camp out there. And so we actually found a spot where we set up and had stuff for a fire ready to go. We didn't lit a fire yet. We planned and ended up going into this ravine and creek bottom and just trudging through that after going on the trail system and trying to interact with these things a lot more. So we split off, and there were 2 researchers at camp who wanted to stay at camp, and me and the other researcher from the night before decided to walk the trail systems and go on the creek bottom. And what ended up happening is we started hearing some stuff, And it's always like, well, maybe that's a Bigfoot. Maybe it's a chipmunk or something else. And there's a lot of what ifs and maybes that, are very small, but tend to add up to things. And escalation started happening once we got into the creek bottom. We actually got hissed at. We had a couple of grunts and a growl. And this was recorded, and this is all on Alligan Expedition Part 2. And when we're experiencing all this, the other researchers, each and every time is getting a little bit more aggravated and scared and kind of upset because these things are close. I mean, when we're hissed at, the thing is, it's pretty close to be able to hear it and get it on the GoPro audio. So we get in this creek bottom. As we're walking around, we start thinking that they're right there, obviously, around us. And it's pretty hard to trudge through there with the muck and the sludge and slime, sinking down. You have to really have waders. And at that point, we were just soaking wet and trudging through. So I think it was kind of unexpected. I don't think the Sasquatches really expected that at nighttime. So at the same time this is happening, we're getting text messages and phone calls about there's something at camp. There's something around camp that's messing with us and stuff. And the other researcher starts to actually blare the radio music out of a truck. And that is causing the Sasquatches at camp, apparently, to be active. And at this moment, we were kind of frustrated because we're trying to capture audio of what's happening around us, and we have this music and stuff, and I'm talking to the other researcher, and I'm kind of like, I really hope he kind of cuts it out because it's messing with what we're trying to do. And apparently, and then I text him a pretty heated message about shutting that music off because we need to be able to hear the stuff on audio, even at camp. And so the music goes off, and we're thinking, okay, sweet. And we walk around a couple more minutes and get a couple more things going on where we think we're hearing them around us, but we can't quite see them. All of a sudden, there's this huge just explosion of water splash where it felt like this bowling ball sized boulder splashed into the water, into this creek that was maybe 50 feet away from us. We're kind of on this island, and the water goes around this little island on this creek, and the water splashed like this rock was just came straight down with enough force that, to be frank, if it hit one of us like a bowling ball, it would have crumpled us into the ground, broken us, probably killed us, most likely. But the fact that we wouldn't have heard it or seen it, most definitely, was very scary. And the other researchers was like, oh my gosh, did you just hear that? And something got thrown into the water, into the creek. And he was, that was about it for him. He was kind of scared at that moment. And rightfully so. That was a pretty dangerous situation and warning to not mess around with these creatures because, we're just pretty much a couple of toddlers out there stumbling around, not very fast, and these things are walking around in circles with us and have artillery shells that are lobbing out there. It's pretty intense feeling, and in those situations, and I told him, it's like every situation, you got to remain calm. You can't be scared. You can be scared, but you can't run away. Where you're going to run. You can't run fast enough, and you're nowhere near anything that's going to help. You can't be mad. You can't be aggressive. You shouldn't go and start shooting your gun off because, you don't even see what's through the rock. What's that going to do? The best thing to do in almost every scenario is to remain calm and just walk out. And that's what I've always done and always helped me. So that's what we did, because that was a clear warning sign. And at the same time, getting the text messages, phones blowing up. There's something at camp, there's something at camp. Well, let's just go back to camp. There's more people, and if there's stuff happening out there, then we'll be good. Because we can go out there and still capture evidence of Sasquatches, next to camp without being so vulnerable in these ravines and creek bottoms. And so that's what we did when we got up there. The other researchers were like, yeah, there was something around camp. The music was blaring, and all of a sudden, a chunk of wood flew up and hit the back of the window and landed into the bed. And it was, we've seen the piece of wood and stuff, and I'm pretty sure that, that's what actually happened. They had no reason to lie about it. And it was a piece of split firewood that actually came from the fire pit that, I had prepped up and ready to go to light. And so they were pretty shook up about that. And he said, he shut the music off and walked around, and he looked over there, and he said that he seen the round head of one sticking up about 8 foot above a bush that you could see from camp, from his position where the truck was parked. And that when he seen it and looked over there, it ducked out and went away. And so we walked around over there trying to look and see if we could see anything. And nothing else happened that night. But that was pretty intense, We got a lot of that captured on audio, and it's on the YouTube and the part 1 and part 2 of the Alligan expedition. So that was a pretty good learning experience about, chasing after these things, and compared to not chasing after it. And it is pretty scary when you are doing that. It does take a good team, a good group of people to be out there, because when you're in those oh crap moments, you are relying on your battle buddy when you're out there, and you don't want to cross any line that's going to get anyone hurt or anything that's going to jeopardize the safety of people. So that was a pretty intense learning experience. So after that, I think we started, did a couple winter expeditions and stuff. Nothing major happened all the way up until we had our second event, which was the Michigan Bigfoot Conference. And it was a pretty big conference in Ann Arbor and stuff. Had a good group of people that showed up and stuff. It was wonderful to meet Cliff Brackman, and even had Igor Burtsev there, and quite the character. So we ended up going up north after the event, up to a cabin, up to a place where, it should look like a good prime area of Sasquatch, Bigfoot area. And this was up in the UP. We set up camp. There was multiple researchers there from around the country. We had the Squatchers. We had Robert Kreider there, Adam Davies, a number of Michigan researchers, of course. But we had a cabin where a number of researchers and the ladies stayed, and we had a campsite out a couple hundred yards out away from the cabin in the woodline and stuff. And we went around the areas and stuff, had some little things happen, possible tracks that were found, and potential ghost stuff. But we ended up moving the campsite miles and miles away into the actual wilderness off of a 2-track trail, and started exploring that area. And during the daytime, as different groups are, in different areas, and some people are at camp, the people at camp, and we have audio recorders going during this time, the people at camp are hearing stuff, and it's coming from the swamp, and, they're not quite sure. Sounds like a couple of times they actually said it, sounded like a person talking out there, but there was no one out there at the time. And so we were out there and did some night investigations, rode ATVs around, and at one particular time, a group of people rode on the ATVs and came up upon a gravel pit and thought they saw a huge creature that went up this gravel pit. And as we investigated, they came back and got more people with equipment. They came back and as we investigated, there was definitely something pretty huge that made some impressions in the gravel that, it hollowed it out and slid down and went up the embankment. And so, the next night, and the whole reason we came out there and stuff, because people are riding out there and they found a huge X structure, and Jason Kenzie was out there from Searching for Sasquatch on Tubi. Great guy, funny, awesome to be out in the field with, just a hoot to be around. And so he was very adamant, he's a filmmaker making a documentary, and very adamant that he wants to set up his hammock underneath this huge X structure. And so he does, and another researcher's camping out, just like 10 feet from him, leaned up, sitting up against a tree. And that's how they're going to sleep. He's going to sleep in this cover hammock and stuff. And I think the first night that we were out there is when he heard something walking around camp. He woke up and he heard something heavy walking around camp. And it sounded bipedal. And he kind of got freaked out and said, Dave, is that you? Is that you walking out there? And he as he kind of, opened up his hammock thing and looked out, Dave was, waking up and he was sitting right there. And I say, no, I didn't walk out there or anything. And so that really, got Jason excited and stuff. And the next couple of nights when we were out there was pretty awesome. But the second to last night that we were out there, I had put an audio recorder way off down this trail around this bend and needed to change the batteries. And I asked anyone, the whole camp, who's volunteering to go with me to walk out there to change the batteries. And the only hand that shot up was Jason. It was probably the best hand to shoot up because he was shooting a documentary. He had the best 4K camera on site. So we loaded up, walked down this trail system, got into this piney area, and changed out the recorder. My headlight died. It was a really expensive one, a nice one that could see a couple hundred yards with, a nice red light. So I had to use one of Jason's kind of cheaper, white light things. And so when we walked back to camp, we got across this 3 branches that were broken and broke down and in our face. I mean, plain as day, we would have ran into them. And so we're talking about it like, was this here, when we walked over here? And it's like, no, I don't remember pushing anything or dodging anything. And pretty sure this is new. And, maybe the Sasquatch and stuff did it. And kind of half jokingly. And as we walk and take a couple steps, we hear all of a sudden this burst of commotion, or like something on the ground swept a bunch of leaves out of the area. This just burst of commotion. And all of a sudden I grab the rifle off my shoulder and I pointed towards the direction of the sound, but at the ground, because I don't see what's actually making the sound. I'm thinking it's a bear. I'm thinking it's wolves, maybe a lion, mountain lion, cougar, because we actually seen those tracks throughout this week that we were up there. And very quickly, there's this commotion of movement that scatters. And instinctively, very fast, I thought, that's Bigfoot stuff. That sounds like a Bigfoot scattering around because of the slinking and stuff that I've described in the previous show. And so I actually shouldered my rifle pretty much just moments after that, hearing that. And a couple of moments, after that is when we actually see the eye shine peek out from behind this tree that's probably, 60 feet away the most, down the trail where we just came from, actually. And so we're looking at it, and, Jason starts to film. He turns on his Sony 4K camcorder. And, he says, wow, do you see that? And for what seemed like eternity, but, we're looking at it, we're pointing, and I'm hearing, it sounds like something coming around us. And I say to Jason, I think there's more than one. There's one circling around us. And very quickly, there's a second one that pops out and hits 7, maybe 8 feet tall, standing on the tree. All we see is like the head and eye shine of these creatures. So I'm thinking, well, it could be a raccoon. There could be raccoons just, popped out of the tree, because all I'm seeing is like, a kind of silhouette of a head, and it's just eye shines just looking right at you. And one's about 3 feet off the ground next to the tree. One's 8 feet off the ground next to the tree, popping out. And so to them, they were popping off of the right side of the tree, and we were looking at them, so they're popping off towards the left from our point of view. And I'm thinking, okay, it could be a bear, it could be this, a raccoon or bear are the only things I'm thinking that could be standing or on the tree. And very, we're pointing at him and stuff, like, we see him, and his camcorder can't see the eye shine. Fortunately, we are able to see it with our eyes, but the camera did not pick this up. And the one on the bottom turns and looks up. And when it does that, I see the entire silhouette of its cranium from the side profile. And you see where like its face would be and where a forehead would go. And then it had like another extension of a forehead that went up to like a crest. What we see on like a great ape or like a gorilla. And when it did that and looked up, I instantly knew that's not a wolf, that's not a raccoon, that's not a bear. That's what we were looking for, this Sasquatch creatures. And this huge, just crest looking massive, elongated skull. And it looked up, and it looked back down, and I'm still hearing this one. It seems like there's another one moving around out of us. We're not quite sure how many there are. And so we're filming, and all of a sudden Jason steps back and he brushes against a bush and scares himself and kind of gasps, and I kind of put my hands up in between him and the Sasquatch, and I start to laugh, to show that we were friendly. It's funny. He got scared. That's kind of comical and funny, because these creatures might understand these exaggerated body language and emotional, responses, like laughing at something that's funny and things like that. So that's exactly what I did instinctively, just to calm the situation down, because I have a rifle and stuff, and these creatures are doing this. So we're, kind of freaked out a little bit right there, but, we, at the same time, me and Jason kind of almost like a feeling, we got, well, let's go up there and check. And so we start to walk over there, and they disappear as we're walking up there. Instinctively, I begin to like sing this Native American greeting of just, hello, how are you? And singing it in a tone that seems docile and friendly. And Jason just sings la 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 la. And he's kind of scared. You can kind of see I'm kind of scared too. It's a pretty intense situation, but trying to be as friendly as we can, and singing this tonal music to not get our heads ripped off, frankly. But so we get up to the spot where the creatures were, and we looked both ways, and there's a pretty big like tunnel through the kind of like forested brush where a big creature could go without being heard. But all around us is forest, so it's not like you can't go far without making too much noise, at least we would think. But we're standing there and looking, and I look over to my left, staring, or whatever could be right there. I had my headlamp, and look forward, and Jason starts turning the camera back on us because there's no action for the camera to see, and he's explaining what's going on. We're moving back and forth, and he catches this huge eyeball that's standing right there. right pretty much next to us. I mean, 15, 20 feet away. I mean, pretty far, but pretty close enough that camcorder is picking it up, and it's a huge, again, one solid eyeball. Like the creature has one eyeball shut or something. We don't see it. We're on hearing it, and we decide to turn around and walk back because there's more equipment. There's more people to witness this stuff. And I'm trying to get this Native American greeting to them. We're talking to them. I'm asking them if we can see them. Could we see you? We don't mean no harm, stuff like that. And we get back to where the twigs are broken, and we start talking about, well, yeah, I think definitely they did this manipulation for us to notice as we're, walking back. And maybe we just caught them as they just did it, or they were waiting here to watch us as we possibly notice this, or, something like that. And, as we're walking up to that, the camera picks up that single eyeball shine again. And, it's pretty far away because we're moving down the trail now, but you can see it almost like it turned and is looking at us now in a different position to where it would have been when it first was picked up. And so after we talk about the tree manipulation, and we're kind of just standing there, I'm looking one way, and Jason's looking down the trail where we have to go. And the camera's facing him, so you can see Jason's face. And he's looking, and he almost says something like he's seen something, but then he looks back at me and he kind of just like almost brushes it off. And he looks back, walks a couple steps, looks at me, and he walks again, looks, and all of a sudden you see his face on the camera do a double take and look, and almost like a factory reset happens. His face completely just gets wiped away, and he starts shouting, "I just seen one cross the trail. I just seen it. It just crawled across the trail." And I start asking him rapid fire questions like, what it looked like, how big was it, how far away was it, where did it go? And he starts answering them, and he's like, the eyeball, the eye shine stuff was huge, and it just went across, and they were, like this. And I'm looking at where the creature's spider crawled, is what he described. It was standing there, and it dropped down and spider crawled across the trail. And, again, it's pretty close to where, as soon as he tells me where it went, I'm looking, and there's nothing around there, and I'm not hearing anything. That's the weirdest part, is not hearing anything. So he gets kind of freaked out, and I actually say, thank you, Sabe. That's the Native American term up in the region that we're at for Sasquatch and stuff. So I said, thank you guys for letting us see them. And I invited them to come back to camp with us because the situation's pretty scary. We should get back to camp. Again, more people. And so we did. And we told everyone, got everyone excited. And later that night, we were all kind of talking to camp. Because later that night, when we were all talking at camp, because activity died down, people went out and stuff, but nothing else happened. A person was messing around with a flare, and they looked up and seen an individual that was behind all of us and stuff, kind of out behind where I was camped, watching us. And unfortunately, this flare wasn't recording and stuff. It actually had a software issue that wasn't supposed to be on there. As this creature seemed to notice the researcher who had the flare, who was watching this creature and walking over to him, the creature seemed to notice him and just walked completely straight backwards and then dipped down and was gone. And of course, the researcher alerted everyone, and we scattered around and tried to figure out and find where that thing went, and couldn't. So that was a pretty intense moment with me and Jason, and pretty scary, intense moment in general because, one, I had a rifle, aimed it at the creatures, but when I put the rifle away, they came back and showed themselves. And, that was an incredible thing that, at the time I didn't have my night vision, I didn't have my thermal, And if I'm ever in that kind of situation again, the new thermal camera will almost definitely pick all of that up and have almost undeniable proof. In that situation, it really seemed like the rifle and the gun didn't matter in that situation once they realized I wasn't going to actually shoot at them. They got pretty scared when I pointed the rifle at them because they scattered away on both sides. But again, once I put that rifle around, they came out. And I've been pondering this ever since it happened. And it's almost like they took the chance and decided to alert us to their presence by brushing the ground or causing some kind of disturbance in the ground that alerted us. Even though I had a rifle on my shoulder, then I'm sure they know what it was. I've been carrying it out there all week. I'm sure they knew exactly what they were doing when they decided, you know what, let's make some sounds, let's alert these people. And I'm sure they fully expected the rifle to be pointed at them almost because, that's what normally would happen with people that carry out in the woods where there's bears and wolves and other things. And so when I put the rifle away, it's like that intelligent decision making comes into play where, well, it wasn't that long before they actually showed themselves and, were pointing at them and stuff. And I really believe in the body language, is something how we communicate with them, but by, because I don't know if they understand English and all that. They certainly have never spoke English to me. But I try to speak to that. But I think the body language is really helpful because I think they will pick up on that and understand that a lot better. And so, we pointed at them to let them know we've seen them. And it was pretty incredible and stuff. And, after that, researching and come to find out that there is a lot of missing people all around there. So, and it was one of those moments where, how far is this situation going to go when these creatures are alerting us to their presence, letting us watch them? And there was that third one that creeped around us, got behind us, and I don't know, was watching us, waiting for us as we walked down the trail before Jason seen it crawl across the trail system. I mean, so that was pretty crazy. So after that happened, we kind of downsized on having a bunch of people all at camp and researching stuff at once in the group. So downsizing stuff, I started implementing more audio equipment in different spots and begin to get some interesting things like tree knocks and some vocalizations. I actually got some that sounds like something, when you pick up a stick, you whip it across the air and it goes whoosh, whoosh. I got that a couple of times in this particular spot where I've been researching over the years. And over the years, like I mentioned in the earlier episode, was a spot that has produced a couple of very interesting things, like mostly wood knocks. But when I went in this area, this one time I went down this hill on the trail system, I heard a wood knock in the front left of me. Knock. A couple of seconds later, I heard another one to the front right of me. Knock. A couple of seconds later, I heard one all the way to behind me to the right. Knock. And another one all the way to the left. Knock. Like I was in a box, a square, and all the corners were knocks. And I was just, oh, what? Instantly kind of shocked and stuff, and started going out there pretty much for a whole week as time allowed, and started noticing these tree manipulations and stuff that was on the trail that wasn't there before, and a pine branch that was woven into maple branches and stuff in the structure where, when you look around, there's no pine trees for a 200-yard radius in every direction. There's no pine trees for it to fall. This one time out there, I started hearing this tree kind of creak in the wind. And I'm in this spot, and I'm walking around, and I walk to a whole different spot, and I hear the same sound of this tree creaking in the wind. I was like, oh, yeah, that's weird. It kind of sounds the same. And I go to a completely different spot, and again, I hear the same exact sound of this tree creaking in the wind. Almost like it's following me. And at this point, I'm like, okay, come on now. But I go to another spot, and it happened again. And I'm thinking, I don't know what that is. That's pretty weird. Same area. But I started recently, still continuing doing the audio, and over the past years, getting these wood knocks fairly consistent, but also the changes in the environment, like when you walk up and you're placing your recorder in a particular tree and you take a particular path, all of a sudden there's broken limbs that are stuffed up almost blatant in your way and up in a position where you have to step into to get to the recorder. I've actually had some of that documented, and a boulder a boulder mound is actually pretty close by to one of these things like I've described before. And there are a number of different good-sized rocks and heavy rocks. And one of these boulders actually recently just got moved, and got moved about 30 feet away. And so I've been waiting for this to happen to try to replicate it, and I was able to document myself attempting to pick up this rock and walk it back to where it was supposed to be. And this thing is heavy. And I was unfortunately unable to get it back over there, but to show that a single person is not able to lift this heavy weight and carry it over there. So I it's this escalation of things that are happening in this particular area that I'm very excited for and able to document. So there are a number of areas that me and the group research and like to go to. And there was a particular area that has a number of sightings that we had been working for a while, but this one particular night, I was out trying to get out there at nighttime researching in a field, and went out to these sidewoods and was over by another sighting, actual spot where someone had seen one. And I was pretty much wrapping up, thinking nothing was happening, blabbering away on the GoPro, and all of a sudden I hear this knock and this vocal response, and I was able to capture that, and it was on the other side of this field in this woodline. So I went across the field as quickly as I could, got to the edge of the woodline and waited, figuring, well, I might hear more stuff. I did a little response, and I waited an hour and nothing else happened. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm getting ate up by bugs, and I'm just going to go in my car and kind of be lazy and set the audio recorder on top of the car and go to sleep. It was still kind of chilly out there. It was February, but it wasn't really snowing out, but it was a little chilly out. I didn't feel like making a fire and roughing it. Yeah, it was definitely February and stuff, so I don't think the bugs were out there that time. And that was February of last year, because we had gone camping after this. But so I put the audio recorder on top of the car to be lazy, and for the next 30 minutes, nothing happens. But after that, there are knocks that are able to be picked up on the audio recorder. And for the next 2.5 hours, there are 37 knocks that are recorded. And these knocks are at various sound levels and density. I would say like power levels of being smacked against something. And there are like double knocks, like knock, knock. And there are a couple triple knocks where something fast, rapidly smacks the tree, and 3 successions, tap, tap, tap. And it sounds like, pretty dense enough that, if I was outside of the car, I probably would have heard this stuff, but I actually ended up passing out. But it sounds pretty hefty, like, someone's out there with a baseball bat smacking these trees, and you can tell that it's farther away sometimes, and then it's closer. And so after discovering that, we Actually went camping out there. I was roughing it. And it wasn't snowing out, but it was still cold out. And I slept out there in a Mylar blanket underneath a tarp with a little Dakota hole fire. And unfortunately, nothing else happened that particular time other than the continued audio research that's been coming out there, which is wood knocks and potential vocalizations. But unfortunately, when you're doing audio recordings and researching and trying to figure out what's going on, you really need to know all the animal sounds and potential sounds. And most of the time when you hear stuff, you know, unless you can really determine it's really good quality of what it actually is, you know, most of the time I personally chalk it up to just nature and stuff. You know, it's undetermined. So, but it's a promising area that we continue to research and are happy to take other people out to. Actually, it's one of the spots that we're going to be going to after our conference. So in this other area I like to go to often, another researcher and myself went out to the spot, and we were more out there for kind of paranormal. Well, she was out there for the more paranormal stuff. And so we were tagging along this spot, and nothing was really happening. We actually walked down this trail into this field, and I had my night vision camera that I just got, and she was walking up in front of me a couple of paces and seeing what she described was this small, almost like, well, at first what she said was like this furry, like gorilla monkey thing that crawled into the woods, and we went over there and looked and stuff, but she said that it was this small, not very tall, almost like a very juvenile, maybe, 3 to 4 feet the most, I think is what she was describing. And it walked into the woods, and we were walking over there hearing stuff. And as we are walking the four corners in kind of a counterclockwise fashion, we get to this point, and I start seeing this light above the trees, and I'm trying to film that. And all of a sudden, she's in front of me. She freaks out and says, "Something just touched me. Something just touched me." And something had physically grabbed her. Because she had demonstrated on me, like physically grabbed her shoulder. And I'm literally right there in front of her, and nothing was there. And so that was kind of freaky, because I was looking at this like almost UFO light above the trees that we couldn't figure out. And that went away, of course, when I, looked back towards the tree line after focusing on this situation. The light was gone. And this area has produced a number of, odd things. And I've actually got a number of reports out of there where, back in the early 90s, the boys and boys going up around there basically went out and seen an orb in this area, and they ran back to the house, and were looking out the window and seeing a Sasquatch in the tree line walk down the tree line on the edge of their back property, the back backyard. And this is a farmer now, and had no idea about Bigfoot or anything like that until I kind of mentioned that. And he's like, "You know what? I remember I had this." He told me the story, and not a person who would lie. So we tend to go to that area often. And this area, again, was out with that female, and out researching, and we actually came across and was able to document this eye shine. We walked up this trail, we walked back down, and all of a sudden she's hearing something, and we get up in there, and there's this eye shine behind this tree, and we're looking at it and staring at us, and I believe I started doing my Native American calls to it, the greeting. Ended up walking over there, and it scattered away, and actually could hear it going through the woods. Yeah, it was kind of intense and stuff for the female, as it is for anyone, actually. It's pretty intense to, kind of be around these creatures and see them in the woods watching you, and like most animals would run away and would be scared almost instantly before you're even able to get a look most of the time. These creatures, almost have no problem getting right up next to you and watching you and patiently waiting for you to walk down the trail past them. And it seems like, from these experiences, it seems like they get very close and have no problem. So that's what we've been doing pretty much lately and stuff, is busting out the thermals, doing some night investigations. I haven't been successful in that yet, but this passive audio research is really a big thing. And what I've noticed for the most part is it almost seems like, when I'm getting this different stuff happens, like I have a recording of a rock in the middle of the night after hearing, there's tree knocks and there's stuff around it. It's almost like these creatures know the audio recorder's out there. I've actually had a rock being thrown at the tree that the recorder's in, and it bounces down the tree and hits the ground. And you can tell a thud, like someone threw it at the tree. And so I set the recorder out there, and it's running nonstop. And you can clearly hear me walking away, and usually, stuff starts to pop off between 8 and 2 a.m. in the morning. And usually around, in this one particular spot, around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 12 is when it almost seems like, again, something comes up the recorder and almost starts tapping on it. Tap, tap, rustling stuff around. And there's this, what I call the OG sound, because I've heard it so many times, I can't figure out what it is. I'm not sure if it's the bug or a tree. But it only happens in this one location at this particular tree that has a bunch of vines. But it sounds like this gurgling, a gurgling sound that's like running down the tree almost. It's this weird, it's a weird sound. So got a couple of interesting things that we're working on. And with rocks being placed recently, the other day, this week actually, a piece of concrete rock from like a concrete foundation was placed on the trail where I have to go get my recorder in the middle of the woods where there's no concrete foundation to be found in that particular area that I would say that I know of. And it's something that is placed almost in an obvious fashion for a person to notice. And it's the same thing that I've been experiencing for all these years, is this manipulation, this stuff that they place on trail systems for almost us to notice. It's this weird thing where, how would they notice? How would they know if we're going to notice a rock that's placed on the trail system without actually sitting around and watching for someone to walk by and, pick it up or move it? Or in my case, a number of times, walking down the trail system and walking back out, there's fresh sapling broke in the middle of the trail, or there's this rock, or recently this year during the spring, I was walking on a trail system and walking back, same exact trail system that no one passed me by. There is a green water bottle on a log right there, plain as day. But it wasn't there when I walked down this trail before. And I documented that, and it's plain as day. It's a green water bottle that's sitting right there to be noticed next to the trail on a log that it was not there before. And I've had this happen going back up north to that spot where we had the encounters with a big group from the last show. Driving the car up, driving the car back down, there is this broken sapling branch with leaves across the trail. I got to get out and move it. And I lean up against the tree, figuring, well, if it'll move again, I'll definitely know. And I think it's a lot of little subtleties that they'd like to do, where just like when me and Jason had the encounter, and they had the 3 broken sticks in the middle of the trail where our heads were going to bump into that wasn't there before. It's almost like they want us to kind of notice these things, and they get kind of curious, I believe, as a researcher when you're out there engaging in research, because it's an activity that a lot of humans don't really do. You know, when you're camping and you're fishing, you're hunting, you're doing whatever, that's not engaging them directly. But when we're researching and we're noticing this stuff and we're moving it or we're documenting and taking pictures, you know, I think they're noticing that, and they know what we're out there doing. You know, we're making these calls, we're trying to call out to them and doing all these things. It really does seem like they will make changes in the environment for, you know, for researchers or anyone else who's noticed them in the area to find. And like I said, for them to be able to figure out who's moving the stuff or who's noticing it, they have to watch. And I think they do. They set up near trailheads and where people are parking, and they will sit up where people are parking to watch how many people are there, who's there, who do they recognize, you know? Because if it's Bob with the dog walking down his favorite trail system, well, it's pretty predictable where Bob's going to most likely go. So we don't have to worry about Bob going over off the trail over here because he's never done that. So I think they get really used to people and their set routines. And when us researchers are out there doing something that's outside of the box, it does pique their curiosity. And another thing that I've noticed is, you know, it seems like the people you go out with really does affect the outcome in situations that you're in. Because, I mean, I just think it's my opinion that, you know, some people who go out there and are, you know, angry or mad or, you know, are not sober and out there drunk and belligerent, and, you know, I don't think they want to interact with those kind of people, you know. And I think they test people to see how they're going to react. Like if they're going to start shooting through the woods for no reason, you know, that's a hot-headed individual. I don't want to go around. And if someone's really scared and stuff and about to pee themselves, well, they might get a kick out of it, but it really seems like when they come across researchers or people who are not scared and are very curious and want to interact, that piques their curiosity and opens up this avenue of interaction where, you know, they probably don't get to have very much often. And that's even if they want to interact with people. So I try to explain, is this calm interaction, this friendliness, this body language and everything to help us show that we're kind of friendly. We don't mean harm. And, you know, we want to try to communicate, you know, at their pace and at their level because, you know, we don't want to force anything. I think that eventually we will have more interaction, be able to caught on camera, like them showing themselves at daytime, you know, and them doing these things that we're able to capture. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go out there and have a lot of fun. Nothing more than that, just doing the Bigfoot stuff. So you can find me and my crew at the Lost Cryptids Conservatory YouTube page. We have the Facebook page and the Facebook group. And also we're having the Michigan Bigfoot and Dogman Conference in Mason, Michigan, September 26th, from noon to 6. And then afterwards we're having a camp out in a well-known Bigfoot area and some of the areas where we actually talked about some of these sightings. So we're going to take a couple of people out and have lots of fun and hope to actually have encounters and, of course, get it on film. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch pick picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking A bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards and double time. Getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards and double time. Getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Something going backwards and double time. Getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sounds. I don't run from banjo music.